Fencing. I think we can officially say we're in our spring season. Been selling a lot of fence these last few weeks, which is pretty exciting to be getting so many families scheduled. And, I know I've heard chatter of a lot of, even Christmas puppies that now getting a little bit bigger, could use a little bit more space in the yard. And obviously kids getting more active, getting the play set up, just really wanting a safe backyard oasis. But even outside of that, when I think of fencing, even if at its most basic core, I'm a very pro property right, ownership rights kind of a person. Obviously anybody that knows me knows that been to our house, like we fence our yards, we fence them extensively. I like to put the fence right on the property line. And really more than anything is I just don't want future conflict with anybody on, hey, where is the property line? Sarah and I do a really good job. If we need a surveyor out there to survey, put the line up, put the fence line right there. And that really does help the neighborhood, the neighbors, just everybody say, okay, well, that's everything. This side's mine. Every side back there is theirs, whatever that might look like. I think just at the basic concept of erecting a fence for just saying, hey, this is what I've purchased at this point, and this is what's on my deed. And, anything beyond that is going to be a neighboring property. But obviously, you've ran a lot more quotes over the last few years than I have. What would you say number 1, 2, and 3 for getting a fence are?
Number 1 is a dog. Number 2 is pools. And then 3 is just kind of your special scenarios where it's, I don't like this guy, or, I guess the past few years, though, is a big one, is just like the neighborhoods with step grading and just where houses are being built closer and closer together. As more time goes on, that you just have to have a fence, not even really a choice at that rate, which really, we're happy to do it, but, you'd think the home builders, like, it'd almost be like part of the whole thing, for how obvious that it's needed. So we're definitely happy to do it, but that would still be third tier, because the first is the dogs. Dogs are huge, and then everybody wants those pools, and that's a code that has to happen. So
yeah,
but like you were even mentioning, marking your property boundary. Especially if you have like a corner lot, especially if you have farmland, even if that's just posts and wire or something, just having a definitive area mark just goes a super long way.
I think even just too, especially in these larger built neighborhoods, and you brought up, like that's referred to as bench cutting those lots, where you just go ahead and go in there and you cut a flat spot, and then it rolls down the hill, you cut the next flat spot. So what we run into a lot, which is pretty technical fence building, is there'll be 0 feet of flat ground to the side of the home, so it just slopes downhill or uphill to the property line and across, or maybe there's a very small flat spot. I think especially in those cases where you're going to have 30 houses in a row, I'm not anti-kid, I'm not anti-neighbor, I'm not anti-strangers, but, it is kind of weird if you're standing in your backyard and somebody else's kids just come trekking from 3 lots over, and God forbid you let your dog out there and some barefoot kid just smokes a turd, nobody likes that. We see that in a lot of the bigger name home builders here in Knoxville, though. You're right, they're shortcutting the excavation work. Because the home buyer, what I've seen kind of the last couple of years is there's a lot more emphasis on purchasing a new construction home than maybe an older remodeled home, and it's just getting that price per square foot as low as possible. So, if you're the developer and you're buying all this land and you're subdividing it, you're really trying to keep your price per lot as low as possible so your construction cost isn't overly swollen by the price of the dirt. And a lot of time in real estate, we just talk about there being a buy-in price. We're really seeing that buy-in price, especially in new construction, minimum being dang near $400,000. $350,000, $400,000 is going to be your step-in price of, maybe just 1,600, 1,700 square foot of new construction home. And I think a lot about that when the builder and HOA requires like a PVC fence, for instance. And this is a home buyer that maybe only put 3.5% down to purchase the home on maybe like an FHA loan. And maybe that was, that's still probably $10,000-$15,000 to close out these deals. And now they're having to buy one of the higher price point fences to go in the yard. We see that time and time again on the beige, the tan, the white PVC. One of my favorite products just because of its longevity. But it is a very large expense for a homeowner right out of the gate. It's not like they can even choose to go with like a 3-board with wire, a chain link. Like there's recorded covenants in these neighborhoods that would not allow that. And that's been really, and I think of that neighborhood over there off of the Carnes Business Park, Carnes Valley Road, where the creek's on the one side of the property. And we've had a lot of clients in there that have wanted to put in aluminum fencing. That particular builder requires archtop privacy, and I mean it's going straight down the hill. Creek. That neighborhood I'm talking about.
Yep.
So there's definitely some. I think everybody has their ideal. This is what I want my backyard to look like, but you start, taking into consideration the geography of the land and the HOA or the POA and what they're going to require, and it can definitely throw some plans for a loop. We run into that.
Yeah, I think it's getting more and more popular. I think not only COVID was a building spike, but I think it was also just like a fencing spike in the industry because you just kind of wanted your space. And like you said, it doesn't mean if you have neighbors, it doesn't mean you don't like them. It doesn't mean that you don't like their kids or want to see them. But you just like having a definitive, this is mine, this is yours, and when the gate's open, you're more than welcome. But when it's closed, let's hang it back a little bit or something, unless you're invited over or something. And that's like I don't know, like I feel like that's probably more in recent years than old. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's a little bit more. Like when I grew up, we didn't really have a fence, and it was just kind of going.
Y'all just ran
everywhere. We just ran. But if you go to the same neighborhood that I grew up in. Now there's fences everywhere, and it's just how it is. So I think that's a tale there, but
that's a southeast thing too. Where I was, spent a lot of my childhood. I had one friend, and they lived next door to their good friends, and neither of them had fences. So, like, everybody all around them had fences. There's this greenway behind their house. There was a fence there, but then it was 2 backyards as one. And I remember as a kid, and they both had trampolines and stuff, so we'd move the trampolines next to each other or jump amongst both of them. But I remember as a kid, I'm like, this is so cool. This is the only person I know that does not have a backyard fence. And their neighbor doesn't either. And so it's one giant backyard. But I think that sticks out so much in my head, and it always has, even before I was in fence, because it was so rare. It was extremely standard, out on the West Coast for every single lot to be fenced. Every single one. Even when I worked for a fence company out there, like the prevalence of fencing was just, like even in a home purchase, in the contract there would be fence repairs. Like, how crazy is that to think about, hey, before I'm going to close on this fence, I want the posts on the back line replaced. They're starting to rot, or I want these gates rebuilt. Like, the fence was a fixture of the home. And that was definitely shell-shocking moving out here, because I remember some of the first things that Sarah and I had spoke about as we moved to Tennessee was that all of the power was overhead, or the majority of the power lines were overhead, and when we moved here, it just seemed like nobody had a fence, which was just crazy. It was crazy to see these brand new neighborhoods, or even these houses that were $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 with no fencing on the property boundary. I was like, what are these people doing? And it's a very large expense. I think that amongst anything else is just was eye opening. So, of course, moving here and had worked in the fence and deck industry in our previous life, I'm like, oh boy, fencing would be a moneymaker here, because at that time there's really 3-4 companies that were putting in a substantial amount of fencing. And ultimately that's what led to, Sarah and I making the decision to open Tim's Fencing. And man, it's been a lot of fun. But you're right, during COVID, everybody opened up. A bunch of fence companies started during COVID, just after COVID, or landscapers that were doing landscape and fence are now full-time fencing only. It's and honestly, that's what the market needs. Like, if we're booking 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks out, like, there's not enough fence contractors. Like,
No.
that's just what it comes down to.
No, and I realized I didn't even say kids, and having a kid of my own for the past couple of years, there's just no way I could envision her playing in the backyard without a fence, or them at home playing in the backyard without a fence. So it's a very prevalent. I don't understand how people do without it or did before, but maybe it's different times. But and that also doesn't even go into anything commercial,
Right.
that we do, because that's a whole different sector.
Yeah, and with Knoxville being located amongst, some major interstates, as in not far off of 81, but 40 runs right through town, 75 runs right through town, and those are major transportation. We got 75 running north-south, we got 40 running east-west. So, I definitely think that we do have some burglary and theft and, amongst other crimes happening in the Knoxville corridor because of that. And I will say, I do believe as Knoxville continues to grow and the interstate continues to grow, the commercial and industrial sector within Tim's Fencing is going to continue to grow as well. Like, we're seeing large commerce companies having a presence in Knoxville, and like, even things like our Cisco plant right there is huge for the food industry. We have some major, like, Kenilworth trucking, equipment dealers, auctioning companies, a lot of logistics companies right here in town. Even just the presence and the growth of places like UPS, FedEx. We've had the opportunity to do, some installation and repairs for all sorts of companies in that sector. But I truly do think that as the population grows, unfortunately, typically the crime does as well. And that does give a lot of opportunities for companies at year end to have security advisors in there. And usually the first thing is if we're keeping things worth money parked outside of the building, it needs to be fenced. A lot of general liability policies and insurance companies are going to require perimeter fencing as well. And it is just, that's been the side of our business, I'd say, in the last 12 months that has grown the most, is definitely our commercial side.
Yeah, it's definitely another business within the business, which is really cool. Because we'd never opened it up like we did now, and I think you and I had even had talks because you had always looked at other business things or whatever, and that's just like, it almost kind of feel like when the residential side gets bland, when you just kind of jump on the commercial, it's just like a whole different sphere. We used to mix those, and that was not a good idea.
No bueno.
And so it's great that now it's basically two separate. Like, even if they could be two separate buildings, it would feel productive. But obviously it's not.
It'd be great. But
It's just two different trains of thought, trains of feeling, material.
How many times in the, like, 2020, 2021, 2022, even some where we'd put a standard residential salesman out on a commercial job and it'd be 6 + 1, and they'd be like, I just added $2 a foot on residential, and it's all 40 weight pipe, it's all 9-gauge fabric.
The favorite would be, he didn't say it was commercial.
He didn't say. And
where do you think you are,
everywhere
bro?
on the plans, 9-gauge, 7-gauge bottom wire, 40 weight domestic pipe.
I don't think KUB wants to do residential. 6 + 1.
Do you mind if we put this knuckle fabric out there? Those are real specific terms. I apologize, but backing up to our residential side for just a second, I feel like we've seen a huge shift. Obviously we've had a big run at horizontal imposed fencing, and that's always been a cornerstone of our business from day one, really. Just the horizontal planks, especially with Tim's Fencing being started kind of within the inner city of North Knoxville, Oakwood, Lincoln Park, Old North, 4th and Gill, Park Ridge, Park City, all those areas there that were kind of getting the gentrification first, younger home buyers. They really, really love, and I love it too. I love the horizontal fence. You have horizontal fencing at your house. I've had horizontal fencing at every house I've had except for the one we're in right now. And gosh, there's nothing better. Long linear lines, just being able to eat up small topographical changes. I really think, as far as wood fencing goes, that's more and more of the direction it's going to go for. And when horizontal was first a thing being installed, all of us fence companies were like, "This is a custom fence style." In reality, it's no, it's either the same speed to install as a vertical plank, or even a little bit faster, a little bit less framework. Now, that being said, if you mess it up, it's a total pain in the butt to repair and fix and make it look right. Like if the installer makes a grade mistake, you're pulling fencing out. There's no pulling a post up to change the fence grade. It's all about getting it right the first time.
Yeah, everyone's like that a lot.
What about
Been
posts? I think
huge.
Postmasters have been big too.
Yep, Postmaster's going more synthetic.
And talk
And
about the
that's-
post. What's the Postmaster?
So the Postmaster is a lifetime metal post that you really don't have to see, that you can still have the look of wood fencing. So if you don't like vinyl, like myself, with where we lived, where we moved to, it didn't really make much sense to put vinyl, and so we wanted the wood look, but we did metal posts like Postmasters, and it's a good option to where you can still have a wood look. But basically what that does is, over time, wood posts not only in 10 years can just rot out, but when you look down a fence line in 2-3 years, sometimes you can have different variations that affect the framing, that affect the look of the fence. That metal post, just none of that happens whatsoever, and the only thing that you have to really worry about is pickets down the run, which is easy to replace and a quick run to Home Depot or wherever. It's just a great option if you're already spending X amount of dollars for $1,000 or $1,500 more. You can really protect that investment. It really goes a long way. So we push those very hard.
And we get a great response from them too. I think especially when you start showing them pictures where fences were installed 100% properly. But wood's a natural product. It's gonna expand and contract. It's gonna shrink and swell. It's gonna crack. It's gonna twist. It's gonna warp. We can't help that. We're very clear with our wood fence clients that that's what they need to expect out of an all wood built fence. But these posts are strong enough that even as the pickets and 2x4s create torsion on the post, that those posts are staying straight. Because, don't quote me, but like one of these Postmaster posts probably weighs 35 pounds. Like, they're not light, and they're longer than a wood post. We can drive them and concrete them. The 2x4s attach with screws. So if there's ever a time in the future where they even need to remove a few panels to get something in and out of the yard, or the fence gets damaged by a lawnmower vehicle, whatever, utility companies and utility easement, it's something where we can repair the fence seamlessly. Like, that's really what I like. Or if it's somebody's forever home, in 15 years they want to change fence style a little bit, or just replace the pickets and 2x4s. Maybe they regretted not staining it, and they said, what, rather than cleaning this, let's just put new pickets and rails on it, then we'll do the staining. I think it can be a game changer for people down the road.
And unfortunately, there's just not a productive, economical product that's come out where, well, I don't want wood, but I want the wood look, and so you get a composite wood fence, and it's just, if that's Trax, and there's a few products that are just astronomical, and you wouldn't want a fence 200-300 feet that way. Maybe if you have like on your patio or something, you could make sense of that, but I mean, that's $20,000 per 200 feet. It just,
yeah, and we
anyone
get that question a ton, is what do you guys
watching
have
something.
for composite options? Which we usually try to steer them towards a PVC vinyl, because that's pretty budget friendly overall. But these slip fences, track fences, aluminum picketed fences, even the printed PVC fence that looks like, a weathered wood or an oak or whatever, a cedar, has the wood grain. A lot of these products, at the bare minimum, which would be the PVC that's printed to look like wood, are going to start at $80 a foot installed, and they're going to go upwards of $150 a foot. Even even products like SimTech and all that are just vastly more expensive than their wood fence counterpart. And I think that's not something that everybody even realizes because, when you drive the streets of, a more popular city in, California or Austin, Texas, Denver, Colorado, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, like those really hot, trendy cities, and you see a lot of these fences on Pinterest. Like what they don't tell you is that was an architect spec fence. It's built around a $4 million home, but when we're living here in Knoxville, Tennessee, we're like, that's a 2,000 square foot, modern looking, tall, skinny house. Well, yeah, but that tall, skinny in Colorado or in Austin, Texas is millions of dollars. So for those homeowners dropping, on a large fence, 30, 40, $50,000 is nothing compared to their home construction cost. And just because fencing's so standard, like they had a budgetary number in there for the fence from the very beginning. So as much as I'd love to be the guy out here selling the super trendy PVC and selling the super trendy Trex fencing, which are phenomenal products. I mean, truly phenomenal products. It's hard to justify that in a market where the average sale is about $400,000. Like that's, you're talking about spending 10% on just fencing. So, are they wanting to come in here? Oh, okay.
Well, and that cost, that's something, that part of the sale of a fence is not, you may or may not get it back in your home sale, which I think a lot of times that you would. However, it's just, like for my house that I'm selling, if you had no fence there, it just, like there's something about it that kind of puts a bow on it. That it's definitive and it kind of sets the tone and the character of like kind of what you're looking for and what you're going
Absolutely.
for. And I forgot where I was going with that. We started talking about Stephanie, but
I'm distracted. I apologize.
what did she want?
I'd say something else fairly large that we've seen a pickup on over the last 5 years too is like the 3-4 rail fence, the crossbuck fence, crossbuck with wire. Everybody knows about this rural movement of America where people like the mini farm, they like sustainable life, and that was a very, very prominent aspect of moving to Knoxville for a lot of people is they're moving to a more rural part of the county, maybe like a Mascot or Straw Plains, further north, further south Knoxville, a lot of rural acreage down there. And, they're buying a house because they're coming from, a westernly state with a lot of money in their pocket. They're coming from New York. They're coming from Ohio. They want to live a less expensive life, maybe early retirements in there, just being with the kids more. And so we've got to help countless families with, providing hundreds and hundreds of feet of this style of fence that looks great from the road. It'll keep livestock in. It keeps kids in. It's a great property boundary. I have it at my house, 4-board crossbuck. We've stained it all black. It's a phenomenal product. And honestly, it's amongst my favorite fence we install.
But you can also do it in PVC.
Absolutely. You bring up a good point.
That
Probably
well.
something I overlook the most is doing PVC rail fence.
Yeah.
But that's an extremely lucrative install for both the client and for the fence company. And I think that's something that you can install a mass amount of footage in a short amount of time, as well as give them a product that 50 years down the road is still going to be in the dirt. No questions asked.
Yeah. I remember what I was saying about that too, which I think is still relevant, but that you want to guide them in a direction of something that they're going to get back, or they're going to get back on their home sale. And so if someone's on a $300,000 to $600,000 house, if they're wanting to, for 200 feet, spend $40,000 on a fence,
Yeah.
It's just kind of up to you to consult them that may not be the best decision down the road, because it's just not like if they wanted to do a full composite, or they wanted to do a full something, or even that farm fence scenario, like if they wanted to do a full composite farm fence and they're going to be selling their house in 3 years, it's just like those are the things that we do day to day of just trying to consult them that's not standard in the market. You're probably not going to see that hit back.
Absolutely. And our staff, our estimators do very, very good I mean, I think being in any sort of sales, like you have to be somebody's fiduciary on, let's talk about spending your money. Let me help you spend your money as wisely as possible. And that's probably a controversial thing to talk about in sales because obviously if we sell a fence that's $100 a foot, we make a substantially larger dollar on that than we do a fence at $20 a foot. But I think the discussions that you and I have had the last 4 or 5 years, that's not the direction we talk. Like obviously we want to keep the doors open. We want everybody to eat well here. But at the end of the day, selling something to somebody that they don't need is just not, like, that's opposite of our company culture. Because we come with the belief that fencing's a necessity, but there's also times where people have called us out and we're like, this makes no sense. What you want here doesn't make any sense. I know we've talked to a lot of people that live on the lake that don't have any animals, don't have anything like that. They have extremely large grades down to the water. A lot of lake houses here, it's seasonal water too. So heck, in the winter, that fence is going to be 10, 12 feet away from the water. And during the summer, it's going to be partially submerged. And those are conversations you and I have both had with clients to where, like, this isn't sustainable. This isn't warranty. We can't warranty this because it's going to be in the water. Is it even something you need a fence? Like, we've walked away from jobs just because we have felt truly like we couldn't provide a product that we could put our name on.
I think the funniest sidebar to that, and this when I first started. Do you remember that one we did in Kingston? It was that guarded fence. And
Yes.
And I told her, I talked to her, I gave every other option.
So she wanted octagonal. Wasn't it octagonal?
It was
squares?
like diamonds. And so every cut had to be 45. This was just a guarded fence, and she wasn't roadside. No one could see it but her. She wanted groundhog wire dug 2 foot deep, 2 foot the other way. So when you looked at her garden fence, it was like diamonds framed in 2x4s.
Perfect layout too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then she wanted a...
Yeah, Daddy had to go out to that one for a number of days.
Yeah.
I was real happy with you on that sale.
Wanted 100 foot of scrap boards.
Yes.
That
ripped at various dimensions, lengths, topped different.
For privacy.
I literally think we had a bunch of cedar, like 1x4, 1x6, 1x8, not left over from something. We had stocked it at the time. And I'm like, grab 204 inchers, 206 inchers, 208 inchers, some 2x2s, some 2x4s. Like, she wanted it to look so eclectic. Like, it looked like something you'd see at Universal Studios, like how it was just dimensionally so variable, or up at Dollywood.
And that was the 1% time where I'm telling her, this is not what you want to do. You're not going to get this back. This is, like, I can do it, but it's this price. And honestly, I think we even priced it just like we don't want to do it, but...
And I think we still lost money on it.
Still lost money on it. But
like the digging was so hard to trench that wire in the ground. We had to get an excavator out there. Remember, we dug a trench all the way around the fence, laid the wire down in there, and then a groundhog or something had buried underneath that wire, and we had to go back out and add it even deeper. Like, it was one of those jobs to where, when you tee something up like that with a client, it really doesn't even matter how much money you put on them. It's so hard to meet the client's expectation. And I have a lot of appreciation for that client. She was an artist, and she comes from a family of art, and I understand that they wanted something extremely special, but
even their walkway
was staggered. That's back when we did decking too, and all the boards were like hanging off this way, hanging off that way, not square, ground level. So we had to dig it all out, lay the joist, tape the joist, lay them in the dirt. Oh man, it was.
Yeah.
Didn't her daughter live there? That was the deal. Her daughter lived there.
It's just one of the weirdest situations I've ever
Cool
ran
house
into,
though. That was a cool house.
Yeah.
That was the first. I bought our first little drone or whatever to film that. I have some really cool videos of that job actually that I want to show you, Milo. Like, Maybe we'll superimpose them on this, and we can just look at them because it was just one of those. We should have never done it. I mean, you're right.
No. But I think
No,
I
wanna
just
find
sold
it.
you on like I put like 15 grand on it, and then it
And I was
cost like
there's
25.
just no such thing. There's no such thing as enough money there. That was, oh man, here it is.
Oh snap, dude, that does look tight though.
That looks cool.
Uh,
Yeah, you'll have to send me that. I'll put it in the video.
That's hilarious. Do you have her privacy fence?
I'm sure I do.
It ain't privacy now, I'm sure.
It wasn't privacy when we built it. We'll superimpose. We'll get these going, guys, because this was.
We were like, rip a board off that tree, bring it. But she loved that. That was her.
Man.
That was her thing. And there's some 1% people like that. They just want it their way and want you to shut up, give them a price, and build it. And that was definitely that scenario. Like us talking like this, it's nothing that we didn't say to her. Like I told her it was
We
crazy.
told her all of
I
this.
said, like, you realize this is like a scrap wood, doing that. Like, she was like, we had fun with it. And
She's
so
like, I really don't care.
I don't care. I'll pay whatever. Like, they had very good money. They didn't care. It was just, she had her sights set on.
I think it was off of a Pinterest picture or something.
Oh, absolutely. Pinterest is my worst enemy.
As a salesman, you're like, no, please no. Gosh, I wish I had
It's the Pinterest garden fences that these
that kill you.
sweet women want to do in their yard. Think it's going to be cheap, but it is
Yeah.
decorative $40 a foot.
June of 2020 was that right there. That was the same month that we had a vehicle rollover on 75 that
Yep.
one of our installers was driving. Gosh,
Yep.
I'm so glad that they walked away relatively okay. They flipped a truck doing about 70 on 75 with a trailer. That was a scary phone call, and we got through that though. That was rough for a minute there, but
Yep.
accidents happen. Accidents happen every day. So, well, what would you say? Say somebody calls us and let's just set up a situation, and money's not an issue, no HOA problems. They have a dog. The dog can jump. The dog can dig. What is your go-to fence style that we're gonna go ahead and just for keeping the dog in? What do you think?
I think I would want to, not to make it too complicated, but I would want to look at their house and see like what their gutters are, what their trim is. Do they have stone? Do they have wood? Do they have? Because there's this different vibes. Like if I pulled up in my house type scenario, to where I would want to say vinyl right off hand, but if it just doesn't go with the vibe, but I would say vinyl. Just as far as like money, no issue. Well, this is good. Obviously if money's like you're probably not going to want to fuss with this in 8 or 10 years. So let's just do something you don't have to worry about.
It's not climbable whatsoever.
It's not climbable, and let's do that. Something on the vinyl direction.
See, I really have a hard time pitching chain link if I know the dog is extremely motivated to get out. Just because whether it's 4, 5, or 6 feet tall, once a dog gets its paws in the chain link weave for the first time and climbs the fence, you're done. You're switching fences, or you're putting privacy slats in it. And that's an expensive endeavor. Like, even when somebody is like, hey, I want privacy, but I don't want to pay for wood, let's do a chain link with privacy slats. Like, what people don't realize is privacy slats are another easy $10 a foot.
Sidebar thing, no, probably wouldn't have to. That's correct, though. I was going to say we could, whether it's cut or not, but because our garden fence that we have right now is it's like 4.5 feet or whatever our board fence. But I was going to say we could build little 4-foot pins, 5-foot pins so people could bring their dog over.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, a dog like Jane gets motivated enough. We watched Jane while Milo was while they were on their ski trip. Here we are working out. It's like 6:30 in the morning, 7 in the morning, and we're just working out, and I hear barking. It sounds like it's in the driveway, and I'm like, no way. And Jeff, my neighbor, calls. He's like, your third dog's out barking at me. Jane had climbed, more than likely. I don't think she could just sheer jump it, but she climbed over our 4 board crossbuck, which is installed right at 4.5 feet. Like it's not a 48-inch install. It's a 54. Nothing. Like it was nothing. Just climbs right over it. So then the rest of the week, I'm like, well, leaving the dogs in the backyard while we're gone's off limits. So that's a thing, which is fine. But I do, especially in those breeds, I would say I've seen the most chain link fences climbed by German Shepherds, 10 to 1 of any other dog. Like when we have a chain link install where the client calls and they're usually frustrated, my dog's getting over this fence, and most of the time, I'm like, watch your dog. They're not digging under it. Like, you'll see where they're digging. It's going to take a lot of a hole to get underneath that fence just because the way we put the bottom wire on and fasten it. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, I put a camera up and dog's climbing right over it like a cat. Happens every day, all the time. And I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it because now we're looking at modifying the fence to the tune of $10, $12 a linear foot to be able to keep the dog in. And we really could have just rewound and been a little more insistent on doing something that wasn't chain link. Like we could have got him even a 5-foot installed board fence or a modified install board fence where maybe we put the wire on the outside and then cap boards. And I don't know if that's necessarily, or, privacy fencing even in a horizontal fashion where it's not going to be ladder framed. I think there's a lot of options. PVC. I love PVC for dogs.
I think if your dog run can be privacy, it's going to age better for you as a dog owner because they don't see every little squirrel, every car, every kid, because then your dog is the dog that barks at everything in the neighborhood, and it goes a very, very long way. Especially if you have any traffic, like they just don't see all those things to react to where maybe in that scenario she saw a squirrel or
I think she saw the neighbor's dog, a little
was-
Shih Tzu.
and
She's
was-
like, "Ooh, I want to meet that dog. I want
and
to
was
sniff
gone.
that. I want to sniff that butt." Huh, Jane?
Because the dog was with the right amount of reason, and there's not much keeping it in.
Yeah.
And so it's if you can do a privacy dog run, it goes a long way. Like even at these dog shelters that we do, when you pull up, we've done privacy vinyl, and it's not until you get in the back that they do chain link and things because
Yeah.
the dog would be barking at everybody that pulls up.
Because really,
So
even a
it's
standard wood fence does not provide complete privacy. Because
No.
as everything shrinks, swells, expands, contracts, there's small little gaps that appear between the boards, sometimes even up to 1/4 of an inch. And I'll tell you what, when you're driving by, you can see through that fence. The dog can see out of the fence. And that's where also, when we're talking full privacy, which you'd have to do board on board or a tight shadow box and wood fencing, by the time you're paying that, we can get you in a PVC product all day. That's going to be zero maintenance. It's going to install a lot tighter. We can get you high quality gates that aren't pushable. You're not going to have as many mishaps with the gates, because everything's on self-closing hinges. That eliminates the possibility right there that the lawnmower leaves the gate open, the pool service guy leaves the gate open, your child leaves the gate open. I can't tell you how many times I've chased our dogs, or they get out. They don't really run anywhere because Brantley doesn't shut a gate all the way on our wood fence because I don't have sprung hinges on it. You'd think the woodman would, but, I guess he don't. And those are all great, great questions to talk about with the clients, especially if they got kids between the age of 3 and 8. Well, you know what? Responsibility is not really on the front of a 3 to 8-year-old. I'll tell you that personally. So, when they walk out the gate or walk out the back door, they don't always shut it. And that's just something to where, hey, let's do a self-closing hinge. Let's go with self-latching latch. Let's set you up for as much convenience as possible. Like you've already told me your dog's got out of the last 3 fences. Okay, well, we need to have sprung hinges. We need to have a high quality top and bottom latch. We need to have drop rods and guides. And really just walk them through the process of here's what we see on both kids and animals getting out, and also just keeping things in. Like we want as secure a fence as possible to keep as many honest and dishonest people out of their yard. So pools, obviously we got to keep the kids from drowning. We got to work within pool code, which I could see vastly changing in the coming years as many pools as went in this nation since COVID. I wouldn't be surprised to see them requiring a minimum of 60-inch fencing on every gate to have expanded metal panels to where you can't reach through it. Like that's all stuff that's in the talks right now on pool code is how can we make these fences safer. only flush bottom rails. Like, I think it could get extremely particular moving forward just to increase safety because, especially out here, like it's starting to get warm right now. There's a little kid that fell in a pool over the weekend that's in ICU right now. They had to revive him. He nearly drowned. Toddler.
Really?
Those instances are all the time. I mean, even dogs like Jane. Another Jane story. First day, bring her home from the office. That dog don't even see the pool. Running man's right into the pool. Panics. Now, our swimming pool has a ledge all the way around it for safety for kids and animals. The deep end and the shallow end have substantial ledges. We have steps. Like, the dogs can get out as long as they don't completely freak out. Like our dogs, I'll throw them in the pool every now and then. They get out every time by themselves. I don't have to yank them out. But that's also something to consider too, is like even beyond the fence, just general pool safety. Like, it's even funny because I was driving my truck and I noticed this message every time I turn it off. It says, check the back seat. Like, that's legit stuff. Like, kids have legitly died because dad's busy. He was dropping the kid off. He doesn't usually drop the kid off, and he just drove to work, parked the car in the sun all day. Toddler fell asleep, and like, that's a traumatic, tragic thing. But it'd be horrific. But those things happen, unfortunately. And it's just, like, I was really, really nervous. Sarah was nervous when we first put our pool in. And Brantley could pretty much swim. When we put our pool in. And it was still a pool safety thing. Like, I think about that with our dogs all the time. Because we have chickens, too. So when we leave, if we're going to leave the dogs out, I'll usually lock them on the pool deck. But I do think, like, oh, my gosh, what if they were just rolling on the pool deck and fell in? Like, I would think they would get out no problem, but it's always in the back of my head. Like, I wouldn't do that with Jane when we were watching her. Like, God forbid she falls in the pool. Like, that'd be a horrible phone call to make to Milo,
Hey, man.
Hey, small thing. Congratulations. But,
are you still all in on this dog thing?
Yeah. Jane got a new home. All dogs go to heaven. That's what we need to focus on here. It'd be horrendous. Like, that's my worst nightmare. Like, dogs just, gosh. I mean, we've had some close calls with sides. Somebody hit one of our dogs once with their car. And horrible. I hate even thinking about it. Just horrible. And one should say I shouldn't have had my dog out in front of the house. Like, you're probably right. But it's a dead-end road. The dog's out with us all the time. Accidents happen. Ultimately, it was my fault. But, man, well, there's a dark turn. But, I mean, really, overall, I don't think there's a good or a bad fence style to pick. I think that's what we do very, very well, is meeting people at their need level. We're always going to have a good, better, best option for you. But there's times I love running chain link. I love installing chain link. My favorite fence to put my hands on myself, and it goes quickly. It's economical. I think it makes a great property boundary. For a lot of dogs, it works very, very well. For children, it works very well. And, just things like extensive gate works, very economical, but truly I think top to bottom, we're not installing a fence that any of us are going to stand next to and go, probably not a great fence. We've cut those fences out of our product line. Mm-hmm. You and I have talked extensively about really drawing the line on what we do on custom fencing, because it's hard to provide a aesthetically pleasing custom wood fence that's going to last a long time.
Yeah, like now the fence we were talking about, as a joke, we would never do that now.
Like decorator with lattice and window panes and extensive caps and trims and all that. Every piece of fence you add on, every piece of wood you add onto the face of the fence, it looks horrible in 2 years. Like, I don't care who you are. Mm-hmm. Don't care. So, well, new things coming. I'm excited about looking at those fasteners, the Scrail fasteners, which is a nail and a screw together. I think for, especially our wood fencing, that does tend to have the most torsion on it, as in probably board fencing and horizontally imposed fencing. I think it'd do big things in those markets. Mm-hmm. To be able to have the versatility, especially in a Postmaster install, to remove one picket with a screw head, rather than having to get the pry bar out and the hammer. Now you're probably replacing 3 after you put the hammer pressure on it. But even imagine just removing cap boards on a horizontal fence with a Scrail. Mm-hmm. You could take it off, replace it, put the screws right back in. You're done. Mm-hmm. So, other than that, we're just keeping it simple.
I like that.
Keeping it simple.
Doing our thing.
We don't stain. We don't build decks. We cut all that out, As fun as it was when we did. Just, it's hard to have the right people in the right place every day on that job.
Mm-hmm.
Although we were building projects that any company would be proud of, and our clients were extremely happy. It's hard to work at somebody's house for weeks on end without there being a little bit of disgruntledness. One of our carpenters would leave, a Rockstar Energy can underneath the deck by accident, or wouldn't clean up the concrete that got spilled around the footer perfectly, and those are the
Cussed
things.
out on a Sunday.
Yeah, I'm trying to host a
Good
barbecue, and somebody left a chew pouch on the patio, and I'm like, oh gosh, let me talk to him. I hate that too. Like, I'm embarrassed to get the phone call. I hate those phone calls, but they happen. Mistakes happen. Your installer truck leaked all over my driveway. That's my least favorite. Why are we parking in the driveway? Please remind me. Oh, you moved their car so we could park in the driveway, and then their truck leaked? Like, that's just bad luck. That is bad luck right there. So it just reminds me, like, we just repoured our driveway at our house, and we had all the guys over for 4th of July or B's birthday maybe, and everybody left, and there was so much oil.
Oh, man.
It's a couple of our boys really like the diesel, like bro dozers that are running lots of boost and all that. But I'll tell you what, they're leaking all over the place. Just puddles of oil.
Yeah, this will be
all
fine.
over my driveway.
There's a grass option, but I'm gonna choose the white fresh concrete.
50 yards of concrete just done. Let's just get some oil. It's fine. It really doesn't bother me that much, but it was we've about got it all. I've put so much degreaser on it to get that stuff out. That's how it goes. It's all part of it. It is all part of it. We've even repoured some driveways from scratching them just to keep the client happy.
Good God.
Oh, one up in Halls that Victor rammed his trailer into real good. That was a good one. Scratches were like 5 inches deep. I'm like, Victor, did you not notice it wasn't moving when you were reversing?
The driveway was that big.
It was
you know what? This will work.
Yeah, let me put my trailer up there.
This will work.
Oh, well, I think that's about all I got today.
Yeah.
Just a little.
Some good fence knowledge.
Yeah. We can make your fence, we can make your backyard pretty. I mean, that's for sure. Just accent fencing, even. I'm a big fan of that. We don't have to do the whole perimeter, we can just do a little bit. I
Business
like
in
it.
the front, party in the back.
That's right. We'll be the mullets of fence. Let's do it. Thank you.